Hey guys, I'm Sean from the Comics Pals, and I am here with up and coming writer who is working on some pretty fantastic books, I must say, and I'm glad we're here to talk about them right now. I'm talking about the writer of I Hate This Place, or the name that I prefer, Fuck This Place.
Hmm.
Um, the writer of Where Monsters Lie, one of the writers behind Thanos' Death Notes, the writer behind Peacemaker Tries Hard, so many amazing books. I'm talking about Kyle Starks. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I like that intro. I like that up and coming. Finally
Yes.
doing it. I'm finally coming.
Yes, exactly. And this is an industry where a lot of times, like someone like you, for example, I find your work here in 2023. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh man, you know, a fresh face, somebody new, somebody's got something interesting to say. But of course, for you, from your perspective, you're like, I, I'm not new to this. I'm true to this. I've been doing this.
Yeah. Well, listen. Just real quick. I'm 46. I'm not young man, right? And I started doing this professionally like only 6 years ago.
Hmm.
And I was only making comics a few years before that for fun, for hobbies, for jokes. And I did Sex Castle. Sex Castle was my first major book, and it was nominated for an Eisner. I optioned it before it came out. It was wild for me. But I just kickstarted it first, and it's just something I made out of love. And
Hmm.
I ended up through this sort of weird series of events having dinner with Matt Fraction and Chip Zdarsky at
Wow.
Heroes Con. And afterwards, Matt was like, "Oh, I want to read this book. This guy was telling me it's real good." And I'm like, "Oh, I'll bring it to you or whatever." And anyway, long story short, he ended up reading it and he read it on his plane and he was tweeting it. And I sold like, 10 copies, 20 copies. I was so stoked to have made 10 extra sales. And he's like, "Hey, do you want to talk to Image?" And I was like, for sure. And so, I mean, that's how it started, right? But I say to Matt every time I'm like, I owe you forever. And he says, well, it wouldn't matter. Like the book's good. Like it doesn't matter. But there's 100 good things that no one ever sees. There's
Hmm.
100 good albums no one listens to. There's thousands of good books don't read. So it is lucky. And if it took 6 years for you to find me, I'm glad we found each other. I do think I've reached a point where I'm for sure doing my most notable works. Um, I Hate This Place. I think we sold 30,000 copies of issue one. Horror is
Wow.
great right now. Horror in comics is doing great, which is thrilling to someone who loves horror. Um, and I hope everyone else who finds me this year maybe checks out Sex Castle or Rock Candy Mountain or one of my other Six Sidekicks of Trigger Keaton. All these other books I did. Um, yeah, man, it's a journey. We're doing the journey, and I'm glad anyone new finds me. It's very exciting.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And you talk about the resurgence of horror
Yeah,
comics. It's a real boom right now, and it's so cool to see outside of the big two, so much great horror out there. But yours is different because your horror books are a little more quirky, and I
yeah,
feel like they're coming from a place of, how do I say this? Like a lot of horror right now is, it'll be monster based or something like that. And yours is a little bit off. Like you have doomsday preppers in your books, you've got
sure.
UFOs, but you've also got, more classic horror style characters. So I'm loving the different flavors that you're bringing to the table. Is that something that's deliberate for you, or is that just a part of your DNA?
I think there's something I love. So my to reference Sex Castle again because I feel like it sets a. I'm gonna assume no one knows who I am now. No one has ever heard of Kyle Starks. No one knows him. The Sex Castle was a love letter to 80s action movies. I said it's the best 80s action movie never made, right?
Mm.
And when I made that book, I didn't want to make a spoof. I didn't want to make a satire, but I love 80s action movies, and I wanted to sort of swim in these tropes and archetypes, and that's what it is. So it's very much like a love letter to these tropes and me creating something new. And horror is the same. Like I love horror, and one of the things I love about horror is that there's so many different takes on it. There's so many different perspectives and routes and ways. There's so many different things you can do, which is I mean, I Hate This Place is about a couple who inherits the most paranormal place. It's haunted, there's ghosts, there's monsters, there's a dark entity in the woods, there's lights in the sky. And what I liked about that setting is I could do whatever horror story I wanted to do. Like, even in the beginning, like it's clearly a haunted ranch. Clearly there's a sort of Stephen King dark entity, But out the gate, I'm like, there's a slasher. A human man slasher because I love slasher movies. I love them, but I also love spookies. I love the spookies, and I love, sort of some body. I hate body horror stuff, but I had to put some in there. Um, so I mean, I love these. I love how stories are constructed, and so that's very much me. Like I can play with all these genres, whereas Where Monsters Lie is about from Dark Horse is about a gated community for slasher villains, and I love all those slasher movies so much, and I love the archetype of sort of like these singular villains with all their sort of different shticks or whatever, you know.
Yeah,
And I think a
yeah.
lot of that I realize now, like I think it's because I was raised on superhero comics, and I love that sort of idea of someone having a shtick and a costume. I think that's why I like slasher villains so much, and they're always a clear good versus evil that's going to end in a fight, and I love a fight. So yeah, it's like I don't want to do a spoof, I don't want to do a satire. I want to make something that no one's that I feel that's unique and fresh, but also I want people to feel so familiar. And I think both of those books do that. It's like I haven't read a book about someone who's had the most haunted paranormal place or a gate. But I want you to be like, oh yeah, I recognize these things. Like these things feel familiar to me. And I think it's just that
Right.
I love tropes and I love the parts of story and I like playing with those so much.
Yeah, I thought it was really really interesting, the idea of a gated community for for these slasher type characters. And I loved how they all felt like they could have been the star of their own franchise. Like if they had their own movie. And that was my sort of headcanon, is like these are all that they're Jason level in their own
Yeah.
respective spaces, and then they're brought together. It felt like a Super Smash Brothers of slasher villains.
Yeah, that's a great. I love that. I love that Super Smash Brothers. Yeah, man. Let's hope Shutter. Let's get Shutter involved. Let's tell them. I was like, because I mean, not that I never make anything with that intention. But as we finished, I was like, Shutter could do a lot with this. They'd have their own universe to play with.
Yeah,
Because as I'm doing it, like my characters only exist in sort of the moment. But I'm like, man, I kind of want to see the Puzzleman, Professor Puzzleman, you know, prequel or whatever.
right.
I want to see what's up with all these characters. And who knows? Like you never know. Like it's Dark Horse, it could get big, and we have like a Black Hammer. It won't, but you never know. It could be like a weird Black Hammer universe of Where Monsters Lie. Uh, that'd be pretty cool. But yeah, I like that's what you want. I think it's a very difficult thing, and I'm not necessarily saying I did it well, but I think it's how you walk into it. Is that like there's a character like they're archetypes, right?
Right.
So this character is sort of the chainsaw cannibal character, which is like, oh, it's Leatherface. It's not Leatherface, but it's Leatherface. And like, oh, this is the sort of the what they call we like to call the shape in horror circles, right? It's Michael Myers, it's Jason, and like it's very much also like a shorthand more than me wanting to be like, oh, it's like because I want people to go, oh, well, what's going to happen if Leatherface gets near Jason, right? Right? Are they
Right.
going to fight? Like, what happens if they fight? And that's part of the whole thing. Like, not just me being interested in like who builds Jigsaw Man's traps for him because he's not building them. We all know that. But like all these questions, like these logistical questions of being a slasher, like where do they go between their movies? Like they have to go somewhere. They're not just like hiding in the woods. They're eating
Right.
popcorn. Like you know what I mean? Like they have to be eating popcorn. So I mean that was really all the thing. But yeah, I like that Super Smash Brothers. And I say you want to be familiar, but not familiar at all. Um, so yeah, that was the intention, and I'm glad to hear it was moderately successful.
Yeah, I mean it definitely landed on me, and I think the more you enjoy horror, the more you'll get out of it, like the more roots you have there. Not to
Yeah.
say that it won't work for someone who, is newer
No,
to
yeah,
horror. Like it'll feel right regardless, because no matter how much horror you've consumed in your life, everybody knows Jason, Freddy, like certain characters and certain ideas and horror archetypes. And
yeah,
and
for
we're all
sure.
familiar with those.
I think one of the things again, I make my stories like it's a horror story, but I like the idea that anyone would enjoy it
Yeah.
because it's like I said, it feels like something you've consumed before. But like any sort of genre thing, I think you're rewarded for how much more you love that thing. I had like a few Easter eggs in the first one, which were kind of throwaway bits for me, and a couple of like the more horror centric places were like, oh, we love it, like we get it, it's Christine, like you were to Christine. I'm like, oh, hey, that's cool. I kind of just threw it in there, not that it was like a deep cut, but I was like, I kind of threw some of that stuff in there just for like for my own amusement and like, oh,
Sure.
we get it, and I'm like, yeah, get it, we love it.
Yeah, I think both Where Monsters Lie and I Hate This Place are a lot of fun. I Hate This Place is a little bit more it's definitely very different from that. I
Sure,
really enjoyed Dante Howitzer.
sure.
This
Breakout character 2022, Dante Howitzer.
unbelievable, unbelievable. I couldn't get enough of that character, and I love the fact that you were able to, because again, I'm new to you, so I don't know
Yeah,
what to expect, but right away you have these dynamic characters that I'm invested in, and we're only talking
yeah.
about a series that, up until that point is only, 3 or 4
Three issues.
issues
Yeah, he's
deep.
he shows up. He shows up in the third issue.
Right. So it's like, wow, 3 issues in, and here's a character that I love, that I'm thinking, and obviously the main characters as well,
Sure.
but just, so was it important for you to nail it and like um intrigue us with these really interesting characters right away?
Well, so for everything, but for that book in particular, my thing in horror, especially for these girls, because these girls are trapped in this place, they
Right.
can't leave this awful place, is that it's very difficult to sort of create that sort of dread and tension in a comic. It's hard to look at these characters and be like, uh, they are mortal. You know what I mean? And like, I'm worried. So my thing is, which is kind of par for the course for all my books, is what I want people to want to spend time with these characters. I want them to want to know what's going to happen to these characters and to worry and to love these characters. So it was very much the intention for Gabby and Trudy to come across as very likable, as very charming, as someone that you want to spend time with, but also you don't want anything terrible to happen to.
Right.
Um, and Dante is the same. I just want, if I want to be interested in a character, if I introduce a character, I want to be interested. I want to be interested in them. And Dante is just another Kyle Stark's character. I feel like it's something I do pretty well, because I'm really character driven. I'm very dialogue driven in a lot of ways. But yeah, Dante was I don't want to say he was more popular than I expected, but he was kind of more popular because I like him. I think Dante is great. I love him. It's like, man, he's really popular. He really broke out. I hope nothing bad happens to him. That would be terrible. That'd be terrible if anything bad happened to the breakout character in my horror book. Uh,
And
but
I
yeah, no, I'm very character centric, and I get asked a lot because like even like here's this horror place you can't escape from, which is very interesting to me because I'd never heard of a place that has everything in a horror. Like it's haunted with monsters and it has everything, right? I never heard of that before, so I was very interested in that. But the setting's just a setting, and I need to figure out what the story. And the story is even more important than the characters. Like once I get to the story part, I'm like, this is the events that happen.
right.
Then the characters only exist to serve those functions, right? Like the characters really only exist to either cause some sort of reaction or to move the story along. And so I get to that point, I'm like, well, now I need to be interested in these characters. And for Gabby and Trudy, one of them's a survivalist, and I thought, how interesting if you spend your whole life preparing to how to handle the worst situations, and then you find yourself on. There's no solution for this haunted. There's no resolution. You've never like you're. She's trying to figure out like civil war or like the water shortage. You know what I mean? Like she's like trying to. She's prepared herself for worst case scenarios, and now she's in a situation where she has no system for that, right?
Mhm.
And Gabby, her wife, is like a perpetual optimist, and it's the same. If you're a perpetual optimist, you're put in a situation that's there's nothing good coming out of it, right? Like how do you survive that? And those were things that were really interesting to me. And I thought also, I was like, oh, if they interest me, and these characters are not necessarily likable. Likable isn't the right word, though. These two characters are specifically very likable. Dante's kind of a dick, right? I mean, but like he's still like you're still like I can't wait to see what this guy does next, but to make them likable in a way that people go, I love these girls. I can't, I hope nothing happens to them. I want to see how they
Right.
get out of this next one. Like that's the secret for not any horror, but for a lot is you want to, the more you worry about those characters, the scarier it is, right?
And I'm glad you said that, because that's actually something that I really felt strongly in this book that I don't often feel in horror, where it's like, hey, yeah, I'm here for Jason, I don't
Yeah.
care about the little kids he's killing or whatever. I'm here to see those moments happen, divorced from emotion about the people that he's killing. And for me, that actually diminishes my interest in horror, mainstream, like
Yeah.
horror
Yeah. No, I'm with
movie.
you. Cause it started different, right? It started with like, we're following the victims.
Right.
And then by like three, it's like, no, the victims aren't selling anything. They're dead after every movie anyway. People are here for Jason with his machete.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I hadn't really thought of it. It's 100% true.
Right.
I
And
think that
so,
I think like with Nice House on the Lake
yeah.
with the James Caan. I think
Yeah.
those characters. I think he does a great job of making you. And there's some of them are assholes, but I think he does a great job in that book, particularly of you going. I got to know more about these characters. Like I got to know more.
Right. In a very lost way,
Yeah, yeah,
similar
yeah,
to, that show. He was able to do that. And I think that that was super effective. In your story, you have that sense of dread, and you have that they're being chased, and the stakes are very high, but
yeah,
then there's also these character moments, and we care about their survival, and we understand who they are pretty early. And I think
yeah,
choosing to say, hey, she's a survivalist, right? This is the kind of character that we don't often see in these kinds of situations. So wow, this is unique. I care so much more, and it fits. It fits that she's a
yeah.
survivalist. So I've been having a blast, and it's so much fun. It's
I
fun,
love to hear
but
it.
it's also horror, and I feel
Yeah,
like we don't get that so much.
yeah. I love to hear that. I think that's true. I think that's true of all. I've always said that I think comics should be fun, and I don't think enough people lean into that. And that's not to say they need to be funny or comedic, but I think it should be and sort of entertaining romp. And I'm not saying all comics should be that way, but
Sure.
like I want my comics to feel that way. Is like you're like that was fun, and even if it's sad or awful, that I still would be like, well, that was fun though. It's a really good use of my time. I enjoyed that experience, and I think in many ways that's sort of setting a low bar.
Mm.
But I think also it's like if I can give people, how long does it take to read a comic? 15 minutes, if that, right? 15 minutes of fun, man, I'm doing it, right? It can't be better than that.
Yeah,
So I
absolutely.
love that. I love to hear that. That's the word, like fun. I want people like those comics are fun. And no one's going to go. I don't think anyone. I'm really good friends with Matt Kent, and Matt Kent's comics are very cerebral. They're very like they're these sort of clever considerations, and they're doing sort of these artistic. And I'm like, man, that's smart. That's smart guy stuff right there. Uh, I don't want. I'm not looking for anyone to be like, wow, that's really smart. But I hope that people go, well, it was different and it was fun, and I really enjoyed it. And that's like the perfect review. That's the perfect review I could get. It was different and it was fun, and I really enjoyed it. Like that's all I'm looking for.
Right. And I would also go out on a limb and say it's not just that. I would also say that you'll find characters that will stick with you, and like I'm still thinking about Dante, and I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to see what happens next. And I think that sometimes we can get so bogged down in you know the heaviness of storytelling that we can often forget, like, hey, this can also just be a good time, and
Yeah.
and you can have an elevated good time. Like, it's not just popcorn. There can be substance there as well.
Right, of course. Yeah. I hope so. And I hope so. I think like that's my standard is it was fun. If I can get staggering work of genius, I'll take that too. I'll take staggering work of genius along with it. But I have a baseline, and if it's not fun, if it wasn't a good use of someone's $5,
Hmm.
then I failed. I feel like I failed, and I don't think I've done that yet. I've been very lucky in such a short time that I don't think I've made anything that's a waste of time yet.
So where are you coming from as far as your philosophies on comics and what comics ought to be? What's your background as a fan of comics and a consumer of stories?
Yeah, so I've been telling my origin story so much. So I can't remember not reading comics. My uncle's name is Tony Starks, and he's
Wow.
always bought and he's always had a side hustle of selling silver and golden age comics. I assume he's why we started reading comics. I suspect more we had a pool list because my mom wanted us to read, and we were both voracious readers. I think it was just like they like at the point we kept just reading them all the time. She's like, you just keep getting them as a weekly, excuse me, as a weekly pool list.
Hmm.
And I had the worst ones. I was a little kid, and I had the most like vanilla like that you could have. It was Spider Man, Hulk, Justice League, X Men, and at the time, none of them were good except for X Men. Spider Man was like fighting Fire Lord, like beating Fire Lord in fights, it's like the boring stuff.
Sure.
And Hulk was in these like this crossroads where like every story was sort of like a sort of sci-fi thing that wasn't like I was a little kid. I just want to see him fight Abomination. Like I didn't know. I just want to see him punch things, but he's in this weird. He's hanging out with this like black space with trees. Justice League was Justice League Detroit, which I'm sure colored me because I just love D-level heroes so much, and I'm sure it's like these were not good. I should not have survived when I started. Like what I remember reading early. But me and my brother both started working at the shop when we were 14, and the shop sold comics, it did movie rental, it bought and sold used books, used music, baseball cards, pornography. It was sort of this like weird jack of all trades, but because like I could, anytime a book came in, if I wanted to read it, I could take it. If I wanted to watch a movie, I could just rent it. If we read every comic, because there was fewer comics back then, every Tuesday night we read every comic, right? And so really through sort of my formative years working at 14, my daughter's 15, she's not working. Um, like I was able to just consume media, and I love consuming media. And I think just having spent years and years of consuming it, and being like, oh, I like this, and I like it because of this, which is how I do everything. That way I can find more of it. Like if you think about why you like a thing, like I like movies, that I like coming of age stories. Like I figured it out. That's not me. I'm saying, for example, I do like a coming of age story, but so it's like find more coming of age stories. Like you'll be happier if you're. So that was really my thing, is like I was consuming all this stuff, um and that when I was 18 is the 90s, and comics were all very grim dark and not much fun, and I kind of got out and went to school to be a fine artist, which I wisely pivoted out of because there's no money in that. um and went to graphic design, and I never even did that. I did what they call pre-press, which is like you get people's graphic design ready for the press. But yeah, so I got out of comics for a long time, and then when we started having kids, I started making more comics, and I made a book called Ricky Thunder, and then I made Sex Castle, and Sex Castle got me Rick and Morty in many, many, many ways, and now here I am today, doing Peacemaker for DC, and having best selling. It's crazy. I never would have thought, like, just my fun little hobby would have got me here. But that's like a lot of it. It's just, I've always, I don't want to say I was critical, but I think probably I was when I was 18, 22, 24. I think I probably was very critical because I was kind of pretentious about it. But it really is like, it's like me thinking a lot of like how characters act in a way that makes you feel a certain way now. It's like how I can see now I was always thinking that way. I like it when these series of events happens. I like it when I'm surprised, but I also like when you get when the character does exactly what you wanted to do. So I just that's how I got here, man. Just years and years and years of consuming things and thinking about them, and then when the time came, like I tried to make each book be what I would like to exist in the world. What the story I wish I could read, and I'd be stoked to read. And again, so far so good. I don't think I have any dogs yet, but who knows? Who knows what's going to happen in the next 3 years? I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, and everybody's sort of comics origin story is different, and it's always interesting to me to hear how a writer or an artist, but I think more of a writer, because it's like an artist is just, hey, I'm really good, take a look,
For sure.
and that's that. Writers, there's a lot more to prove, and it's more
For sure.
difficult to show your work.
And when I started, like I'm a cartoonist. Like I drew all of my early works. I'm just good enough of an artist that I can passively draw a story. And most people don't get that. Most writers, if you just want to write, and then frankly, whenever someone comes up and they're like, "Oh man, I'm a writer and I just want to write comics," I'm always like, "Why? Like, why do you want to write comics? Like, you could write anything. You know what I mean? Like, you could be writing screenplays, you could be writing, and it's like comics are tough. There's not a lot of money in it, and like you have to love it. And if you love it, then it'll all be fine. But as just a writer, you have to. It's always the impetus is on a writer for unpublished. I'm saying for when you're breaking in. For just a writer, the writer has to pay the artist, right? Like there's this impetus, and it's sort of a skewed system that's so difficult for a writer. But also, like in that same regards, is that a writer can't just go look how good I am. Whereas if you're an artist, you can go
Right.
look how good I am, or look how promising I am. And I think for a writer, certainly when you see the product, you can go, oh, this person's good, and they're going to be good. They're going to only be better. But it's hard, man. Like that's the thing with comics. It's like, man, you got to love them. And yeah, no one's got the same. No one's. I did. Jason Latour was doing these sort of like comedians and cars and coffee things with comics for a while. And I remember he's like, "Oh, would you do this interview?" He's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "When did you know you wanted to get into comics?" And I was like 40, like when I was 40 years old. And I tripped. I fell into it. Like it was never. There was no. That's not entirely true, but there's really no point where I was like, "This is my future." I
Right.
always thought, "What a great hobby I have. This hobby pays me if I play my cards right." And Jason was like, he's like, when I was 13, I knew what I was. He's like, I'm going to be in comics. And his whole thing was like, and I got the impression probably for a lot of people he talked to who were big names, bigger than me, right? That they all were was like, this is sort of like this is the goal. Like we have a goal. And it's like, man, I literally tripped and fell into it. and got lucky, and I'm lucky I get to keep doing it. That job, I had this job working at a factory in town that'd been here 140 years. It was the best place to work in town, and that was my job. It was a union job. I had great insurance. You know what I mean? I had a 401k. I was having my second kid. We had two kids, and one day they got bought by a head company, and they just closed. Like they just closed. And my wife was like, and I'm like, I was like, I've done pre-press, which is what I've done it every place in town. We'll have to move. And she was like, well, do you think you could pull off comics? And I was like, I bet I could do it for you. I bet I could do 3 Kickstarters in a year, which is crazy. Now I think about it, I'm like, man, I could have then. Now it's like, that's too much work, man.
Right.
I was like, I bet I could do 3 Kickstarters and like maybe I can finally get a gig. Like, who knows? And she wouldn't clean bathrooms at a hospital, which is the worst job. Like, there's no worse job. You're cleaning the worst bathrooms. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she did that for 2 years, and it worked out because I got Rick and Morty. Like everything sort of fell into place. But man, there's luck involved. Like, I mean, if you make it, like I said, it goes back to what I said at the beginning. Make something great. It'll never stop talking about it. You'll probably be okay, but it's tough, man. There's for sure a lot of luck. There's a lot of luck involved, and I've been very, very lucky for sure, over and over. And I know, like I'm pretty good at this. I'm fairly good at this. But man, there's a lot of luck. There's for sure a lot of luck. So yeah, it's I don't. Whenever I hear people get into it, I'm like, comics, huh? And I'm doing it. I'm doing it with comics, huh? That's interesting.
Well, it's also interesting because now we do have Kickstarter, which is something that
it's completely different. Just the internet, because I think all the time, I went pro 6 years ago, right? But if it was 30 years ago, I could never. I'd have to be in New York. There's no way. It's no conceivable way I could have done it.
Right.
Internet. Just to be able to in a heartbeat show someone a picture or to show someone a page just that it changes everything. It's just a completely different world. And thank God for Kickstarter, because there's dudes who only do that and they're doing great. They're making a living doing that.
Yes.
And there's a lot of that. Like even, people at the con circuit who are hustling real hard, and there's ways to do it now that you could not have, I don't think, even 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. I don't know. I'm bad at history. Who knows?
Well, it's been remarkable to see the industry change and how that has allowed for different voices. I mean, think about how much less dominated the industry is by the big two, in the sense that like there's more than just that, right? Like, we've got,
for sure.
Image is doing phenomenal stuff, and they've been doing phenomenal stuff for
but now you have Vault and you have Boom and you have Mad Cave and Ahoy. Like there's all these little guys that are, to me, legitimate. Like they're legitimate.
Yeah.
They're putting out good work. And it's just like we were talking about earlier. It's so crazy that horror, because in my entire life, I'm exaggerating, because there's periods like, there's 8 years of autobiography comics. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
But it's like it's always been in the direct market. It's always been superhero comics are what I call thrillers, which is like espionage or like vaguely crime related. It's only ever been those two things. Anything else that made it, it's like it's such a miracle. Like it's like, wow, I can't believe you pulled that off. It's such a miracle. And now here's horror, which is a legitimate third genre that's doing great. And like that's so thrilling to me, because it means, well, maybe in another 5 years there'll be a fourth genre. Like maybe there'll be romance comics, or maybe there'll be all mysteries. Like mystery comics will be the rage. You know what I mean? And people who can tell stories that don't necessarily befit superheroes. And I mean, I'm doing superhero stuff now. Yeah. I don't know if my voice necessarily is like, I'm very character driven, and it's not an industry that's necessarily character driven. Like I'm interested to see. I'm excited about the opportunities that are coming my way, and seeing how much I can keep my voice, but also still be true to what people want from superhero comics. But to see this, like, man, it's so great, because I think horror is, I think it's legitimately nestling in, because there's a lot of people making great horror comics.
Yes.
So, but you think like those people who are making great horror comics probably wouldn't have made a great spy book, like, not, I'm exaggerating, because usually people can write well anyway. So yeah, it's crazy. Like the whole industry is changing, and I hope it keeps changing. I hope digital really gets a foothold, because I think there's really a place where that I think digital speaks to an entire audience who never wants to go to a comic book shop.
Yeah.
And you can't blame people for not wanting to go to a comic book shop for most comic book shops. So I think there's like, I wanted to keep growing, and webtoons, you think about like Lore Olympus has like millions and millions of viewers, and I'm like, I think, oh man, Where Monsters Lie did really well. You sold 14,000 copies. I'm like, listen, you know what I want to sell? more than 14,000 copies. Like, and that's 14,005. Like, I want to sell. It's like, man, I'm not making stories, and I speak for everyone in comics. We're not making stories for the void, you know. Like,
Right.
we want our stuff to be consumed. So keep growing. Like, if horror is what gets people into comics, like, hopefully they check out one. If you pick, if right now people are like, oh man, I really love these two Kyle Starks books, these two horror books. Like, man, check out Six Sidekicks of Trigger Keaton. It's not horror, but if you like my other books, I think you'll like it. It's a weird ass mystery, is what it is. And that's the hope. Like, we can sort of keep sort of transitioning out of these little tributaries, right? These little tributaries of the whatever comic river. But yeah, I mean, comic industry is crazy, right? When I worked in the shop, there was Marvel, DC, and if you got anything that wasn't, I had to go through. I just did this thing today. I told you I can talk at length. I told you I could. The Skybound's doing this thing where they're like, oh, we want you to do like your 5 favorite novel or books, literature, your 5 favorite comics. And I was going through all my stuff, which I haven't gone through forever because I'm not a collector, but I have stuff from when I was younger. And I'm going through this box to try to find, like, I'm trying to find one thing. And it's like, man, I have like first print run Bone comics, right? And like,
Wow.
that was like we were crazy about Bone because there was not, like, it was so unique in this. Even like the indie stuff was still like kind of like dark, and my friends are like, man, like, there's place for all this stuff. And the closer that I think America direct market, because the manga people I think get it. Like, stories can be anything, and if they're great, they're great, and it can be anything. It doesn't
Right.
matter. Like, I think the manga readers really get that, and they're not gatekeepy at all. You know what I mean? Like I think direct market people can be. Um, that comics, we're gonna keep going, man. But I'm optimistic for it's just keep changing more and growing, because I think growing is what's going to be the most important, most necessary part of the industry.
Yeah, 100%. And that's something that we talk about a lot on the show, the main show, as it relates to the fact that, the industry it has a certain audience
Mm-hmm.
that seems to kind of want what it wants. And that essentially has been, big two superhero stories.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, if you found Scott Snyder from Batman, right? His biggest hope in life is that when he starts going back and doing heavy creator owned stuff again, like he's doing now, all the people who found him from Batman will follow him. And clearly that has worked.
I think about a bunch of, but that's going again to Matt, my friend Matt. And then and it like, again, like, I'm right now at this point where we're like, hey, he's doing Peacemaker. Like, that's huge. Like, I mean, frankly,
Yeah,
I think it's gonna be huge. I don't know. I can't say that. In my head, it feels like it's gonna be huge. But the way the direct market works, which is not to say people who read comics, but the people who love superhero comics. When I say direct market, I say big two.
yeah,
I'm being
exactly.
nice about it.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Right. I'm being nice about it, but I'm saying the big two is those people. If you That's the bulk of American readers. Like, that's
Yes.
Batman sells 100,000 copies and nothing else does, right? And for whatever reason, if you can spend a couple of years of one good run, two good runs, then people will follow you because you've been validated. Matt did, Pistol Whip. He did all these great indie sort of like weird spy stories, but then he did a year at DC. He did 2 years at DC. He did a year at Valiant, and now he's Matt Kent.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's writing Berserker with Keanu Reeves. He's always been good, but like, no one invested in him, or that direct market readership didn't invest until he spent time in the direct market. And for whatever reason, that's how this industry is that if you want those direct market numbers, that's not right. But if you want to get a piece of that group, you have to spend time in their group. Like, you
Sure.
have to earn. And so, I've always said that. It's like, people like, how do you want it? Like, it's a growth. I don't love. I look around to make sure Marvel. I don't. When I was 17, I loved Marvel. I loved all of it. My daughters, like, I was telling them, like, I was like, man, when I was in middle school, I just wanted to talk about Nightcrawler and Wolverine. Like, that's all I wanted to talk about. And then when I was 18 and I went to college, I was like, I was done. Like, I just didn't care. Like, they put me in a place where I didn't really care. But I don't love those characters. Like, I don't obsess over those characters. I don't fixate because I get to make my own characters. I get to make
Sure.
Dante Howitzer, and I get to make Professor Puzzleman, and I get to make my own characters and my own worlds, and I love them more. So it's hard because now it's like, well, you need to play with these characters, and there are guys like Donny Cates and Matt Rosenberg. They love superheroes, so like they were just waiting not just, but I mean, when they were granted the opportunity, they were like, I know what to do because I've been thinking about it, and I have not, which makes it a little bit tough. But I'm ready to do my time, and I'm going to do the best I can to make sure that those, as we said, are fun, enjoyable, and a good use of your money. But they're still me. Like they
Right.
still, Peacemaker. So Peacemaker is a great example. Is like, what do I love? I love big dumb guys. I love big dumb action, but I like subtext. I like humanity. I like character moments. I like for someone to grow. Like all the undertone stuff is what's really interesting to me. And when I watch that TV show, I'm like, this is my stuff. Like James,
Sure.
which is James Gunn. It's always this. It feels like it's big dumb action, but there's a lot more going on. Rick and Morty is very much the same. It seems like it's this big, whatever thing, but really it's about family. Like more than anything else, it's about this undertone. And those are the things that interest me, is things that are big and dumb but feel like they're more. So Peacemaker for me, it's like just like Rick and Morty, which I did for 5 years. I did it longer than anyone else. Even the Rick and Morty creators at one point in time, it's because like it's right in my wheelhouse. So for them to ask me for something that I liked, I was like, I'm going to nail this because I understand why people like it, because I like it for the same reason, and I can
Right.
do it because it's what I've been doing, and I just got to tweak it a little bit to be a little bit more James Gunny, a little bit more close to that show. So I'm hoping like whatever the next thing is, which I know what it is, but whatever the next thing is, I hope it feels the same way where you go, well, that's something I'm going to check it out because I like that other thing. You'd be like, it's good, it's different than everything else, but it's still really good.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that's what we're hoping for. That's a lot of talking trash about. I like them superheroes, but nothing bad's ever going to happen to them, and that's no fun for me.
Sure, sure. Well, let's talk about Peacemaker because it is coming out on May 2nd. And you're going to be working with Steve Pugh and Jordi Belair on that, which is that's so
Crazy,
cool.
yeah,
Um,
insane.
and it's a nice bump for you, getting to work on a character that I feel like DC is positioning to try to do a little bit more with. So you getting the opportunity on this character, I think is phenomenal for you. What can we expect from this?
I think, I mean, it's going to be a big dumb adventure of a big dumb guy who's going to go through some shit. I it so there's a lot of early discussions of like, well, what kind of peacemaker is it? And I've argued and fought from the beginning. I didn't have to fight that hard, but I was like, it needs to be as close to the show as legally allowed because the show isn't owned by DC Comics, right? It's owned by
Right.
Warner Brothers. So that character is James Gunn. In many ways, it's complicated. And so I really push. It's like, just, what do I want to give people? I want to give people more of that thing. I want them to feel like it's not season two, but it's that same flavor. It's that same. He's juvenile. He's dumb, but he's also sort of sensitive. And um, I don't want to give too much away because it really is, I think, a fun 6 books. But he goes on a great fun adventure. It's nonsensical, not nonsensical, but it's a little bit silly, but also like it's kind of dead serious because he really is dealing with some stuff. Um, I get to play with like if I you never know if it's going to be your only book. So when I was like, oh, here's the villains, it's my 2 favorite villains. I can't say who they are; they show up on the last page. But it's like so you like 2 great villains, more great villains. Um, I think it's going to be really fun. And again, that's what I endeavor to do. I think if you like that Peacemaker show, or if you like James Gunn's Suicide Squad movie, you're going to like it. And a lot of people like those, so a lot of people are going to like those comics. Fingers crossed.
And
Ooh,
that's I'm right there with you.
yeah.
And I think that's the cool thing is that DC is essentially saying, "Hey, here's a character that we think can be something. And here's a character that people really like outside of the comics bubble." And they're giving you, Kyle Starks, a again an up and coming writer, the ball with this character that they clearly want to be something. So they're investing in you, and there's some level of faith there that they clearly have in you to tell a good story with this character. Is there any amount of pressure that you feel knowing that to be the case?
No, no, that might be dumb on my part. Maybe now I feel like there should have. I mean, I, I feel like I feel like being like, hey, we want to make more of that, but we can't technically make that. And I
Right.
do a great opening page bit where I kind of set people up like, um, it's not quite the same. Like it can't be legally. I do like a fun little bit because I want when people who love Peacemaker pick that comic and open that first page, they're like, oh, it's going to be slightly different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
because it has to legally. I don't have control. Like I wanted to use certain characters, and like you can't use those characters. Those are James Gunn's characters. But it's like it's very much the same tone. It's very much the same character. It's the DC Comics Black Label version. My only pressure. I didn't have any pressure from them. But my pressure was I want to make something good enough for the people who like that show. I want them to get that same feel. I want them to get more of that because that's what I want. Like I said, man, I'm trying to make stuff that I want too.
Sure.
And Rick and Morty was the same. Like I wanted to give people more episodes of the show. And for this, it's like I think it's that Peacemaker in comic form, which is really what I endeavored to do. And if I felt any pressure, it's whether or not I was completely 100% accurate in that portrayal or recreation. Portrayal is not right. In the sort of recreation of the tone. And I think I did. I think it's a really fun book. We're getting colors on issue 1 because obviously it's going to print like immediately. Jordy is unbelievable. CPU is unbelievable. All these books we talked about, Artyom Topolin on Where Monsters Lie with Lee Lawford, who's colored deadly. Those guys are great together. Piotr on Where Monsters Lie was perfect for that book. I've been really lucky to get great artists. The CPU, like who knew? Like whomever CPU, that's cool. And some crazy variants. There's always people are like, who do you want to do for the variant? And I'm like, oh, I guess like my friend Chris Schweitzer who drew 6 Sidekicks. I could probably get him. Like I get Erica Henderson because we did a book together. Nice. And they're like, oh, we're gonna have like Dan Hitt. And like I'm like, what are you talking about? Like wow. And like even with that Thanos book, they're like, is there an artist? And I'm like, oh, I don't know anyone. And like, oh well, Ron Lim says he'll draw your Thanos story. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Nice.
That's not an option for me. Like who else is on this book? Someone good gets Ron Lim. Like I don't get that. So it's that's also like crazy is like that stuff is like I can't participate. I'm like I didn't know James Stocco and Fabio Moon and Tyler Quirk did covers for Where Monsters Lie, and I'm like I didn't know I could say any name. Like I didn't know. I thought you would know who I knew I could sucker into doing it. I didn't know I could just name artists. All that Peacemaker has like 100, and they're all by someone crazy good. Chris Anka's doing like all the main covers, and they're doing 2 versions of those covers. Wow. One's like a movie treatment cover. And they look so dope. Like they're so cool looking. And I'm like, what is that? Like usually like it's a fight. It's a fight on these covers because he's like the good interior artist and covers. Artyom's great. Piotr's great. I've been really lucky lately that it's not like a fight to try to get a good cover. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's all crazy. But I didn't feel any pressure. My only pressure is to the readers. They know who I was prior. Like Chris Conroy was like he knew Sex Castle and he knew Rock Candy Mountain. So he knew and he'd said it like he was going to reach out to me before, but he's like not quite the right time or not. And he was right. I mean, I'm like I don't know if I would have done a good job on the thing that he said, but this one, I think enough people were even my editor at Skybound I think was involved because he used to be at DC. He's like, this is the guy you want to do this, and it's true. So I mean, that's me being objective. Like I don't know who. I just feel like this is the book for me. And I can't fail on this book. Now, what's the next thing? Like the next thing might not be like right in my wheelhouse. And I could feel pressure, but I feel like I have a very distinct voice, for better or for worse. I know I have a distinct voice, but whether or not that has like quantifiable like value to it, in terms of like it's a really great voice everyone wants to participate with. Like only I can do that. So like kind of the only pressure is to the reader and to me is that I want to make sure it always feels like my story, even if it's not. Even if I'm like, if I do can't imagine. I don't know what my Superman story would be. Like, oh, he's doing Superman. It's not going to feel like all the other Supermans because it can't. Because like that's not me. And even if it's just there's 2 characters that have never been in Superman and they're dumb idiots, and that's my like things. Like if that gets me through it, then it'll get me through it. Sure. So yeah, no real pressure. Going forward, we'll see. It is very intimidating because it's a different audience, and I'm like I said, I'm very character driven. And historically in those books, that's not how they work. Hawkeye, Vision. I mean, you can count the books that are just 100% character driven,
right?
Over everything else. And it's those books, by the way, usually when they do character driven stuff, is great. So I don't know why they don't do more of it, but I think it's because the readers don't necessarily want that. They want the world ending and some sort of magic monocle or something. I don't know. No one take magical monocle from me. All right. Peacemaker series volume 2, magical monocle. I don't know.
No, I think you're making a really good point in that, like Tom King's Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, for example, was this tremendous story that, barely anybody bought. Like they bought it enough to get it where it needed to go, and then now it's completely sold out, and they actually
Well, because
just
of James Gunn.
restocked. Right,
Because of James Gunn.
because of James Gunn. But I think if the story wasn't strong, word of mouth would
Oh
have
yeah.
gotten around. Whereas it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, I had not heard that book hadn't sold well, because I think that's probably the best book of last year. And I'll tell you, Tom King does right now. He's like kind of only. I'm not reading if he's doing Batman. I've never read it, but I read all of his other stuff, and his stuff right now, Mr. Miracle, the
Strange Adventures.
is that the one?
Rorschach.
Yeah. What's the one he's doing with the great artist right now?
Every single one of them. Oh, Human Target.
Human Target
with
Human
Greg
Target.
Smallwood.
Yeah. Greg Smallwood's unbelievable.
Yes.
They're all, those books, like those Black Label books, basically are all 100% character driven. I think people really engage with them. That Supergirl, I think, is the best book of whatever year it was, 21 or 22.
22.
And I can't believe it didn't sell well, because it's so good and it's Tom King. And I'll tell you, I kind of hate reading that book at first, because when you start reading it, that book is true grit. It is only true grit. That is true grit. It's not. That is that would be like me doing like Catcher in the Rye, but with Spider-Man. It's true grit. And I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. Like, I can't believe he's getting away with this. I can't believe people aren't just like tearing him apart. But by that second issue, and it's still true grit, it's not quite true grit, right? And it's like he used that idea of like sci-fi true grit. It's true grit. And like made it into this other thing, this other beautiful thing. That book's unbelievable. And like, it just showed you like James Gunn is so smart. Like it's just smart enough, one, to be like, why don't we use the stories that already exist, because they're good. But I'm gonna tell you, if they make that movie, the bit where the horse comes around is gonna be very confusing to everybody. It's gonna be very confusing. But that's one of the best books I've read in quite some time. And I was mad. I hate that it's true grit. I hate it. But also, like, by the end, I'm like, I love it. It's not true grit anymore by the end, kind of. So it's just like he was like, I wonder what the superhero version of true grit is, and then he made a beautiful, unique baby. Anyway,
and it is kind of sad though, because like when I spoke to Tom, you know, I brought up Human Target and how tremendous and how much we love it and everything like that, and he's like, well, that's great, and I'm glad you brought that up, because everybody only wants to talk about Batman and no one's buying Human Target.
Really?
And, yeah. And it's like, well, then what is it that people like in comics if Human Target is not worth their dollar?
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
You know, I will say, and I can't speak for Mr. King because he's in a different sphere than I am. If you write on Batman, Batman's the #1 selling book every time it comes out, and it's not close. It's literally twice as much as the next issue, right? So I wonder if that doesn't implant an idea in your head of what sales should be. I bet you Human Target selling 30,000 copies, and that's unbelievable for direct. That's an unbelievable number. I think Rick and Morty sold 15,000, which is, if you think about it, it's such a small number, and it was called a sales beast. Sales beast Rick and Morty with its monthly 15,000. Just doesn't seem like very many, you know.
Yeah, and those are the realities of the numbers in comics, and you know, it sounds so small, but like that's the business, you know. It's
unbelievable. It should be bigger. Should be bigger.
It really should.
So I wonder if you're Tom King and you're like, man, I'm not getting the royalties on Human Target. I'm getting on Batman, you know, because it's selling so much better. I don't know that for sure, but I know Tom King's selling twice as well as I am, for sure, no matter what he does. I guarantee you, no matter what he does, it sells twice as well.
But the unbelievable thing is that, you know, Rick and Morty is a brand and a show that so many all around the world love and know. And then all of that love translates into 15K sales. And then you have a character like Human Target that nobody knows, you know, like for a character who's had two shows, for a character who's had 2 television shows, like so unbelievable unknown.
I forgot it had a TV show, like 5 years ago, like not even too long.
Not that long ago. I remember one from like the mid 2000s that was on Fox, I think, but like pretty low.
So fun. I forgot all about that show.
Yeah.
I wonder what Tom King. I mean, no, again, I think he's one of the best 3 writers in the business, probably. Because like I bet his idea of what's not selling is not the same as actually not selling, because he gets royalties and it's different. Like, man, if you're on my tier, like we're page rate warriors, you know, like I'm just looking to get page rates because I'm not, my stuff's not selling enough to get royalties. Like knock on wood, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But like he's living in a different, he's there. Those guys, the guys above me, they're doing all right. They have different perspectives of the industry than I do. As just a mid tier sort of hustle boy.
Well, you're finding your way in now through through things like Peacemaker, things like Thanos, but you also expressed that like doing big two books is not necessarily your biggest goal in life.
It's not my end goal. It's not my end goal at all.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
And I think that there's a lot of different reasons for that. But yeah, it's not my but I want to do it. I want the challenge of it because I love comics. And when I was a kid, like I said, I didn't mean to interrupt you by the way.
that's okay.
I love comics. And what are comics in America? It's these characters. But at this point, it's like, I'm so lucky because I get to do what I want to do. Will that be the case? It's been that way 6 years. And before then, when I was just dancing in the dark. And at the point where those sort of start to fight each other, and then I don't want to do it because I'm so lucky. Like I don't have to do it right now. And I think like I've not had to do it. I've not had to do it, but I want to. I want the challenge. Like I started doing, for all intents and purposes, action comedy, and then I did action comedy mysteries, and now I'm sort of doing horror and maybe more horror comic. But I want to do everything. I want to do everything. I want to do a serious book. I thought I Hate This Place was my serious book, but it's not. I just can't help myself because I like charming people and I like quirky people. And those are the characters that I want to spend time with. But I want to do everything and I want to do Marvel. But it's like I could never do, I say I could never. There's a part of me that goes, but what would it be like? I can't do a space opera. Like that's just not the way I write. And I don't want to try to shoehorn myself into that. I don't try to figure out like, you know, what my Green Lantern story is. I have no idea, but it's like they're all stories are universal too. Like you can make everything. You know, he had a dog that died. Like Green Lantern had a dog that died at some point, probably. Like that's something he has in common with. You know, Superman had a dog that died. Not Crypto, of course. He's immortal, I think, but probably just some farm dog that was there to keep the chickens in line.
Sure, yeah.
And so it's like all these things are universal, and it's like that's the thing that they know I want the challenge, but yeah, my end goal is not. And then he worked at Marvel for 20 years. That's not my end goal. My end goal is I want to make like I want to do 3 years. I don't who knows. I don't put a year on. I want to do bangers. I want to do things that are not like anything else, but are still fun. And I think that's going to be a thing I have to figure out in terms of that's the new thing I have to learn. The next thing, you know, you're always growing creatively, or you're not moving. So again, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I don't remember what you were saying.
That's totally okay. I think the biggest thing that the big two are always hunting for, at least from what I can tell on my side of things, is writers that have unique voices, right? Like you look at so many of the writers who have exploded over the last 10 years, or even the last 5 years, look at someone like Ram V, very distinct voice.
Oh, yeah.
Not the kind of person that you go, wow, yeah, Ram V, super intellectual, deep thinker, put him on Batman, right? Not immediately where your mind goes, but we see what he's doing with Detective Comics, and it's all working. And I think the reason why it's working is because it is Ram V, and we're getting the unique flavor that only he can bring.
Yeah, Ram V is a good example of a writer who, you know, it was basically either, you know, the big two is like you get validated by the readers, right? They're like, he's good. And that's how all creative things are. Like there's two ways to make it creatively. And I say this because you brought up Ram V. And I'm like, look, there's two ways to do it. Either people continue to validate you. Like this conversation, you've been very generous, is that you go, these are good. This guy's good, right? And so maybe 10 of your readers go buy a comic and they're like, oh, he's right. He is good. And then the next time you say so-and-so is good, they're going to be like, yeah. Or who you said in the past that they know is good, right? It's validation. It's this circle of validation.
Sure.
And you kind of have to keep getting all that validation and you make your way up. And eventually everyone goes, oh, no, he's good. We're just going to buy what he does. You're Matt Kent. You're Tom King, right? The other way to do it, which is impossible, is you come out with a work of staggering genius, unquestionable genius. And that's Ram V. His first book was amazing. His second book was better. His third book was even better. They put him on Batman. He's going to be great. That's a guy, like those first two books, there was no question. Like this guy is on a different level than the rest of us. And we're out here just like, I'm doing like, you know, dick jokes with fucking Michael Myers. Like, you know what I'm just trying to put smiles on faces. That guy is like he's doing the work. the real work. But yeah, it's hard. Like he's a great example because I was trying to say, I was like, there's no one who's done that. There's no one who just shows up and you go, oh, they're unbelievably good. For artists, it's easier because
Right.
it's a visual thing you can see. But even then, I've seen a lot of like unbelievable draftsmen who are terrible storytellers. Comics are different, like illustrations, not comics, and illustrations, not animation, so on and so forth. But Ram V is a good example of someone who's just unquestionably good. Like, there's no question how good he is.
And I only
Yeah, put him on Batman.
I mean
Put him
it's
on
working,
anything; it'd
right?
be
Yeah,
great. Yeah,
exactly. Like, please, I
I
have a
love that.
long.
I
I
love
have a,
that someone wasn't like, well, let's put him on Constantine first for like 5 years. No, they're like, put him on Batman. Like, don't
right.
even screw around with it. Just put him on Batman. It'll be great.
Sure, and obviously Swamp Thing is a tremendous book as well.
Oh yeah,
So,
right. Yeah.
but I brought up Rom to say, like, yeah, you're not necessarily the writer who's going to do what Rom V wants to do, but you're the writer who's going to do what Kyle Starks wants to do. And
Yeah.
there's an audience that wants to see that, and I think that translates. I think that you can do the story about, a
Green
really
Lantern's dog.
yeah, you can do that. You can do the Batman story where it's like, yeah, okay, it's not the most serious. It's not, it's not the death of Batman. It's not Morrison. It's not what Morrison was trying to do, but it is a very fun Bat family story, for example.
Yeah, for sure.
Like,
And you know what? I hope that's true. I really hope that's true because that's what's going to happen.
hey,
And
listen,
sales will decide if that is true and if I get to keep doing it.
yes, and that's 100K sales guaranteed, right? So straight to the bank.
Holy smokes! A royalty check? Who even knew? I'm gonna tell the girls. Girls, Batman bought us all new shoes this year. Thank you, Mr. Batman.
I hope that Batman's bringing more than that for the people that are writing Batman.
They're nice shoes. They're really nice shoes.
Okay,
They're great shoes.
So I guess you've talked about how you're not that compelled by like Marvel, but you also mentioned you grew up on Nightcrawler. So you might not have your big Superman story, but do you have those kinds of things in your mind at all?
So here's the thing. That was my favorite character when I was 17. That might not even be true because there's a lot of characters I like, but let's say Nightcrawler was my favorite childhood character. I have no idea what's going on with him now. Back then, he was just like the sort of happy-go-lucky guy who was kind of embarrassed about his looks. You know what I mean? And I think as a teenager, like, isn't that something that's so relatable?
Sure.
Right? Is his power? It's weirder than everyone. Like no one else has. It doesn't seem like it has like a use in combat like everyone else's does. And that's what I've always been drawn to is those types of characters. My brother loved Wolverine, and that was before the breakout. I remember it's like everyone loves Wolverine. It's like, well, he is great, but that weird like the growth that he had. We're like, everyone loves Wolverine. It's like, yeah, dude, you picked the one that everybody likes. I'm hip, man. I picked the hip character, the obscure character. So the thing, I don't know where anyone is anymore, and I'm reading more now. And generally, if there was like a big event or if there was like a Supergirl is a perfect example. If something was like this is great and notable, I checked it out because if someone says it's good, I always look it out. But like a lot of like I like the Hickman Avengers run, like I read it. It's like that's not for me. It's just 100% not for me, right? I don't know where those characters are, so I look forward to the challenge. I went for the next thing. I'm writing something with Marvel now, which I don't know why they asked me to do it. I think it's good. I think it's way better than it should be, but I don't know why they asked me. It doesn't line up with what I would say my sensibilities are. But it's like I want to if DC's like, hey, we want to give you Lobo or whatever. Lobo's different. I know a little bit about Lobo, but it's like I would like to be okay. Well, let me figure it out. Like that's what I want. I want the challenge of that so badly, and sure. I don't think it's since I started doing Peacemaker, I get asked a lot more like, oh, if you could do any big two property, what would it be? And if you would have asked me a year ago, I'd been like, oh, it's the Great Lakes Avengers, because of this. John Byrne introduced the Great Lakes Avengers and West Coast Avengers. It's 2 issues of just these weird powered guys who are trying to be heroes in Detroit. And they're not ashamed. They're not going to, they don't feel less than. They're just superheroes. They're just superheroes. And it's this masterclass of introducing these sort of D-level characters that aren't D-level. Like only the reader goes, oh, look, she's a fat
Right.
lady. It's like, yeah, she's super strong though, and she's invulnerable. Like, isn't that what we like? She just looks different. Like, what are you doing? And John Byrne had a knack for that Alpha Flight, like just Next Men. Like he had a knack for creating. But those two issues were great, and they kind of showed up every now and then for a few years. They'd show up in Avengers every now, but they disappeared. And I love this. Like, I'm from the Midwest, and I'm sure like the fact that it wasn't L.A. or New York for once in a comic. But I was like, I love the idea because it's like what's related. Like that's so much more human to me. Is that it's like these guys who are they're not, they don't have Iron Man or Thor's powers. But it's like they still want to be heroes, and they still can be heroes. There's nothing stopping them, and they're doing it. They're doing it. And then they turn because the big two has such a they have no sense of comedy. They have no understanding of nuance. Like they become these sort of low hanging fruit gag things,
Mm.
and they to me like they D-Man's another great example. I love D-Man. I
D-Man,
love
yeah.
I love Mark Grunwald, and the Grunwald run had so much D-Man, and D-Man's just like this sweet guy who's trying the best he can. And then what they turn him into, like some weird homeless joke, and it's like, guys, like there's nuance, I like that. I love that. So I got to do Great Lakes Avengers. I got to do a Great Lakes Avengers strip for Marvel Unlimited, and I basically rolled back all the things I hate that have been done to the Great Lakes Avengers. So that would be my answer, but I kind of got to do it. Um, but I love those are the characters I love. Nomad, but the Nomad that had a baby and a shotgun. Like those are the characters that I'm like, these interest me. And for sure, just like James Gunn's going to be a pervading, just like James Gunn can be the subtitle to this interview. James Gunn with Guardians of the Galaxy and James Gunn with Suicide Squad the movie was like, look, these are all characters that no one gives a shit about. I can do whatever I want. And there's an element of that they haven't been defined. So if I wanted to give D-Man a, a cat. You know what I mean? I could give him
Right.
a cat. It doesn't matter. And like the cat's gonna be part of the story, right? Like the cat's important, or maybe D-Man loves the LARP. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I could do that because if I have Black Panther LARP, no one's going for that. You know what I mean? If Thor suddenly loves like collectibles, like no one's going for that. So I think part of the attraction for someone who's not necessarily an outsider like James Gunn or myself is that you go, well, it's kind of a blank canvas, but they're interesting. It's like how like they're already interesting, sort of, but they seem like jokes, but they're not. Everything's interesting for different reasons. So,
Right.
so the thing is, I wish I could be like, I know what's happened to this character for the last 10 years, and so I'm excited about because I can see all the ways to manipulate. You know what I mean? Like, oh, there was sometimes the writer introduced the thing and never went back to it, and I want to bring
Yeah.
that. I have no idea, um, and that's not because I don't like it. It's just because I've been reading Kaiju Max instead. I've been reading Headlopper instead. I've been reading Four Kids Walking. I'm reading other things. You know what I mean? I'm reading the stuff that's in the same. I'm reading Stillwater. I'm not. I didn't read Batman. I read Stillwater and In. You know, like that's what I read from Chip over the last. I read Public Domain. Like Public Domain,
Love that.
so good.
Yeah.
But I it's the challenge because I consider myself a storyteller, and again, it's a very specific voice, whether it's good or bad. But I think it's interesting. I think it's different, and I want the challenge for sure. And here's the thing: like I watch that show, and I'm like, this is Peacemaker for me. And I got to make this character. And I'm like, that character's for me. I could write Peacemaker forever. Am I doing? I'm doing 6 inches. It's like I'm interested because that next character is like I'm probably going to fall in love. Like maybe I fall in love with Ghost Rider. Maybe I fall in love with obscure name X Detective Chimp. That seems like what I do is Detective Chimp.
I feel like that would be that would be a fit.
But like it could be anyone. It's like you just find I just have to find my hook into it, and I'm excited about the challenge. And I guarantee I would bet at some point I'll be like, man, like I loved the New Warriors, like the New Warriors and Thunderbolts sort of came out at the same time, and
Yeah.
I felt during a time of very dark comics. They were like regular ass superhero comics, and I loved them. And that's like, what was it? Like, man, I'm writing Night Thrasher. How weird would that be? Like, I'd be like, this is crazy. This is crazy because I think about that kid. I think about that 18-year-old kid who just loved Nightcrawler. You know what I mean? And to be like, he'd be so stoked about this stuff. That Thanos, I'd be like, 18-year-old me would be like, Thanos? That's cool, right? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, guess who's drawing it? He's like, no, it's not Ron Lim. I'm like, it's Ron Lim. But at the time, but now it's like, look at the great job Ron did. Ron did a great job on this piece. Um, so yeah, it'll be interesting. I hope it happens. And if it doesn't happen, you know what? There's more Kyle Starks comics coming out from Skybound and Dark Horse and Image, and it'll still exist. But I think it seems fun to me, like the challenge of because it's like, like you can play professionally, you can play basketball professionally in Turkey, and you make a living, and you spend your time playing a game you like for a living, but you're in Turkey, right?
Right.
Like you're in Turkey, like you kind of want to go to the NBA for a minute. And I think it's true, even like in wrestling, it's like, man, no one wanted to go to WWE, but then they kind of still want to go to WWE because that's where you made it. That's the idea. Where everyone else goes, you made it. So I do. I think Peacemaker, it already has made some things available, but I'd like to have a run on something. And I don't know what it is. I hope they tell me soon. I hope they tell me, and I hope it's great. And again, I hope everyone reads it and they're like, that was fun. That was worth my time. What a fun comic.
Absolutely, and I look forward to that. You just referenced wrestling, and are you a wrestling fan?
I'm absolutely a wrestling fan. My first comic, which I mentioned earlier, was called The Legend of Ricky Thunder. And at the time, I had never finished a comic. That was my goal. My goal was just to finish a comic because I was having my second kid. And I was like, well, it has to be something that can keep my interest. And this was 2000, early 2010s. And it's about a wrestler. He's the world champ, and then aliens land. He thinks wrestling's real. He doesn't understand, so he's a bad wrestler. But he's the world champ, and aliens land, and they're like, "Well, you're clearly this world's champion if you can defend." It's this dumb little wrestling story. It's on my website, cowstarks.com. It's just this dumb little wrestling story where he's the world champ and he has to defend the world against an alien invasion. You know what I mean?
That's
So yeah,
fun.
I love wrestling. I'm a big wrestling boy. Because I just like 80s action movies, man. And comics, they're all the same. I love these dumb male power fantasies where no matter what the problem is, it must be resolved with fight. It must be resolved with a fight. Uh, so yeah, I'm a big wrestle boy, and it's an interesting time to be a wrestling fan, just like it's an interesting time to be a comic fan.
Completely agreed. So real quick, then, can I get your thoughts on WrestleMania?
Yeah, what do you want to know? What's happening? I've no like they've said nothing, right? Like they
Well,
what's happening
well,
next
we
week?
know
Who knows?
we've got like Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes, for
I
example.
don't think it's going to be just Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes, but I don't know that decisively. I do think they've hard pivoted, and it's going to be Usos versus Sammy and Kevin, right?
Yeah,
Don't you think? I
yeah,
think that's a shame. I mean, that's the end result is those guys taking it for sure. That's wonderful, but I feel like it should be a three-way. I feel like it should be a three-way. I'll tell you, I was talking to my dude because like I didn't watch WWE. I didn't come back until Vince they got rid of him because it was so bad. It was unwatchable. It was literally insulting to me as a fan. And it's funny, like AEW, we watched Lucha Underground. Like Lucha Underground was
sure.
magical, and AEW, especially like the first through the pandemic years, was amazing. And then for some reason, they don't know what they're doing anymore, and it's kind of bad. But it sounds like, man, it's like WWE's got like a handful of things. Like I'm
Yeah,
really interested in
yeah.
this anything with the bloodline. I'm really interested in Ray and Dom
Oh my God,
because it's just a good
yes,
story, right? But I
yes.
think I'll tell you, like what I can't believe I'm excited about. I can't believe I'm excited for Brock Lesnar to throw this 7 foot man around a ring
Come
for like 50
on.
minutes, and it's like, why am I excited? It's like because I want to see him ragdoll a giant man, and that's so it's so messed up. But I'm like, I'm kind of really excited to see him ragdoll this giant man for 15 minutes. There's no story there. It's just Brock Lesnar is going to kill a man, and I'm here for it.
Yeah,
But they have a lot of stuff going on. There's either lesser stuff like the Edge and Judgment Day stuff. I think is passingly interesting because everyone's good. But it's like I'm not. But I tell my dude like you know what I'm really enjoying NXT, and I enjoy NXT because it feels like a high school talent show.
sure.
Everyone's trying really hard, but it's like everyone's trying, like
Yeah,
everyone's trying. And it's also like everyone's trying to get just like a little bit of attention. And my guy was like, he's like, the wrestling's terrible. I'm like, well, the wrestling's the least interesting part of wrestling, especially if it's a WWE product. I don't, I'm not like, man, I hope I get to see 2 hours of people fake fight really good today. I'm like, give me my soap operas. Give me my soap operas, and I want them to fight at the end. Like, that's all I want. It's an interesting time. WWE is great. I do a sticker club. This is my bad pitch. I do a sticker club through my Patreon. It's $5 a month. I do 2 stickers. It's whatever I want. Sometimes I let my Patreon vote. That's the way you do it through Patreon. And this month, at the end of what's this? The first of April, I'm sending out 2 stickers. It's Sammy and Roman. Sammy and Roman. You can see
oh,
them on my Instagram or on my Twitter. So because it's and I've avoided wrestling because like I have my fans who are comic book fans, and it's a lot of movie stuff. It's whatever. It's like Total Recall.
mhm.
We just did. I just did Darkhawk and Sleepwalker for last month because they want to do '90s Marvel dumb Marvel stuff. And so it's my first wrestling, and I'm kind of because like that's a whole different sticker club. But it's like I'm in love with the story. It's the best story in 10 years, maybe longer, frankly. Um, So yeah, and then next month's like Dolly Parton. Well, it's crazy. It's a crazy thing. It's like whatever I want to do, but I let my Patreon vote maybe twice a year because I don't know what to do. But yeah, this month we're doing because I'm so into WWE right now. I think they're doing a great job, and I love Sami. Sami Zayn, I think is the new Mick Foley, right? Like, don't you think he's got that same?
Totally.
Yeah,
Totally.
and here's the thing, the craziest thing, because I'm an indie guy. I was a Chikara guy. I don't know if you know anything about Chikara, but Chikara it was wrestling for superhero fans, and it should have been huge. But loved El Generico, and this guy who is cashing checks with his mouth right now, like at the highest level. Like his stuff is Cody's are great. Don't get me wrong, but Sami's connecting, right? And this is a guy who, until he went to WWE, never said a word of English and never said more than 2 words. Never said more than 2 words, and now it's like, what a prodigy! Like what just a prodigy I think he is. Yeah, I mean, I loved him in NXT. I love him. No, who else can put on a match with Johnny Knoxville that anyone wants to actually watch? Right?
It was good.
It was so good because he's great. Now I'll tell you, this is the point where like people are like, no, we came for the comics. So there was a bit during the Indies when Chikara was and X-Pac was kind of doing this, not a retirement tour, but he's sort of doing the I Still Got It tour, right? And X-Pac's not a very good wrestler. He's fine. Listen, he's just not. I know in WWE the 1-2-3 Kid was better than 90, but that's a low bar, my guys. And people were telling me like, man, like X-Pac's really got it. And I'm like, he's fine. What are you saying? Like, no, did you see that match he had with El Generico? And I'm like, my dude, that's El Generico. Like, that's not X-Pac. El Generico is that good, and everyone looks good with him. That's how good that dude is. Like, you're reading this the wrong way. So seeing him and like Kevin Owens is still Kevin Steen. I have to correct myself every time I go to say because he's still be Kevin Steen to me. Their run in Ring of Honor is one of their story in Ring of Honor is the same as Raven and Tommy Dreamer in ECW. It's an all-time Stone Cold and Undertaker, even all-time GOAT storylines. And I don't know if it quite gets the attention it deserves. That drama they had, those crazy ladder matches, it was like the highest drama wrestling can be. And man, that's when wrestling does. When people don't like wrestling, I'm like, sure, of course you don't. Why would you? But if you want to watch Kevin Owens, Kevin Steen, and El Generico in Ring of Honor, I bet you might change your mind. If you're following Sami Zayn and Roman Reigns, you might change your mind because it's crazy. It's high. It's storytelling at the highest level.
Yeah,
and it's doing it, and it's not a movie. It's not. You can't tell stories in that like you can any place else. The format's different. It doesn't make any sense. It's not suited to tell a story. Like you have to finagle. They're working so hard to make like where do you put the people to do the next thing? Where's the segment? You have to do a segments. It's crazy. Wrestling's crazy, and it's wrestling, action movies, horror too, comic books. Is that at their base, they're fine. You read one and you'll be like, that was fine. And that's sort of the baseline. They're mostly just fine. But every now and then they rise above. And when they do, it's like this is as high as art can be because of the handicaps they had, the disabilities they had to overcome, right? And that's why I love those. I love what they would call low art. 20 years ago, you've been like, oh, that's low art. Like those are low art. It's like now we call them genre, which is way better. They're niche genres. That's what I love, man. You have to overcome so much to tell a good superhero comic or to tell a good horror movie. Because most of the time they're just fine. They're just fine. And that's again why my bar was so low, right? I just want people to be like, that was entertaining. Because I just don't want to be fine. I don't want people to be like, that was fine. I want to be like, that was entertaining. And I endeavor for that. Yeah, WWE is great right now. God bless the WWE right now.
I'm completely with you.
Poor Almas. Almas is a dead man.
He's in trouble.
He's dead, man.
And also, please don't bring back Vince. I did want to say,
please.
Right, the stickers that you talked about. I'm looking at them now. The Roman and Sami, they're so much fun, and there's a whole bunch more that I'm seeing here.
I have a bunch of them.
There's a blast. I saw one when I was looking you up. I saw one of Bane doing a kickflip, I think.
I think it's on my Threadless because he was born in the skate park. Anyway, yeah, I think you can get a sticker, but that's on Threadless. That's on Threadless. I have a shop that I never use, but yeah, I had a dumb Bane joke. I was like, let's put it on a shirt. I have a dumb RoboCop joke that's on there on that shop too. But yeah, the sticker club's fun. What do you do with 24 stickers a year? I don't know. I don't know what people do with them. I think they just stack them up, but they're fun. They're fun. They're fun little things to do, and I think Patreon's a great way to engage with any creator. I'm so busy right now. I'm a bad Patreon, but if you passingly like someone, I speak to anyone, not just you, obviously, because I'm sure you know. But if you're like, man, I really like, um, I'm looking around to just think of someone.
Well, the Comics Pals are a great example because we have a Patreon page.
Right, perfect. Well, okay, yeah. So I mean, that's a perfect thing. Like, and here's the thing: Patreon is great for podcasts because it makes the most
Yeah.
sense. Because it's a format suited to getting a little bit extra, and because you're at there's how else are you making money? Like the only way you're making money is through advertisers or through Patreon, probably, right? Am I
Yeah.
wrong?
Yeah.
All right.
Or YouTube.
So yeah,
YouTube has some opportunities, but yeah.
YouTube with ad sales and stuff too. So like, if you like a creator and they have a Patreon, and if you like someone, if you like Ron B, I don't know if Ron B does. He probably doesn't need it, but maybe or Substack. Substack is very similar in a sketchier, weirder way. Um, is that I think it's a great way to support someone you like, but you also get to interact with them. And this goes again to what you said earlier. Like, it's such a weird time because now if someone reads my Peacemaker on May 2nd or whenever it comes out and they like it, they can literally just talk to me.
Right.
They can just I exist everywhere. And whether or not I necessarily respond, I probably will. Whether or not I respond, right? But it's like you can someone could get on my Patreon and send me a message and I'll respond to it. If you're on Patreon, I have to. You gave me money, I have to respond. I don't legally have to, but I'm obligated because I'm a Midwestern boy. But it's a crazy. That's another crazy thing is like, and there's so many conventions. Like, if you want to meet the person who made the thing you like, you can. If you want to ask them a question, you can. It's just a crazy wild time in that regard. But Patreon, if you like someone, it's probably worth it. You get stickers from me. That's what you get, and occasionally, I do like a tweet. I do like one post a month, maybe. But I used to do Hangouts. I used to be more engaged. And I'm so busy right now. It makes it harder, but we still
Sure.
get the stickers out, and they're fun stickers. And like I said, you get to vote every couple of months. I think the next 3 months are set because I just did a vote, and I'm so busy I can't think about it. So I know we're doing Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. I don't know if you know that. That's a great TV show.
I
Um,
haven't heard of that.
and we're doing Shaun of the Dead. Like, that'll be coming up
Okay.
like the next couple months too. Yeah, and there's obscure. That's what I like about it is because it's whatever I want. You know what I mean? And at the same time, my patrons like, what do you guys want? You want me to do Garth Marenghi's Dark Place? Yeah, I love that. Would I go out at that's something when I first started, I had a Garth Marenghi's Dark Place like print, and no one ever bought it because no one knew what it was. But if you did buy it, I thought you were the cool. Like, this is my guy, right? Like, I found my people. And now it's like I just get to do whatever I want, which is great. That's a great. It's on Hulu. No, it's on Peacock. It used to be on Hulu. It's great. It's got one of the guys from What We Do in Shadows in it,
Okay.
and it's got Richard Ayoade in it. You know Richard from IT Crowd.
I don't. I
Uh,
don't.
Ooh, IT Crowd's great. That's on Netflix. These are British shows. That's why you don't know what they are. But
Okay. Yeah. I'm
uh,
like, huh.
yeah, IT Crowd's great. Dark Marines Dark Places is great. It's basically like Stephen King wrote a medical drama. If it's a spoof of like if Stephen King wrote a medical drama, it's very funny. I think it's 6 episodes. That's all it lasted.
Oh
And
wow.
it's like comically low budget because it would have been. It's like an '80s. It's set in the '80s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, anyway, who cares about Garth Marenghi's Dark Place besides me and all the Garth Marenghi Dark Place fans, I guess. But
Well, if you do care, then I think Kyle's Patreon page would be a great place to go, so that
that's
you can
right.
get that sticker. And I want to say, thank you so much for your time, Kyle, because
Yeah,
I love whenever on this show we get to speak to creators who are doing different things, and that's fun. For me as someone who's been reading comics for 20 years. I will always love superheroes. I will never, my fascination with them will never go away, but I
yeah,
need something different also. And
yeah.
for people like me and people like you, clearly, there's never been a better time to be a comics fan than you'd have to go to before the direct market when you had like all kinds of different genres and it was an explosion and
Mhm.
superheroes were just a small part of the bigger picture. So I appreciate you being one of those bright spots in the industry and
Hey.
someone who's doing something that's different and special. So yes, thank you for that.
Well, thanks for saying that, man. That means a lot because we out here trying. You know,
Yeah.
we're out here trying.
Well, let the people know where they can find you and keep up with your work.
Yeah, I'm at the Kyle Starks on all of them: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. KyleStarks.com is my site. You can buy things off me. Don't buy it from your shop, man. I want your money so badly, but your shop is selling my book. So order from their shop. Uh, don't order from Amazon unless you absolutely have to. Uh, Order from your shop. We love it. We love it. We love it. If you go in there and you tell us if 10 people go into a shop this weekend and say, I want this book by Kyle Starks, they'll be like, oh, and they'll pay attention to the next one. Right now, I have 2 books coming out. I have the second art of I Hate This Place, which started. They both started at the beginning of this month. They're on the same day. They'll be coming out for the same day, I think, for the next 2 months. Where Monsters Lie issue. So the new arc started. The first trades in stores now of I Hate This Place. It came out December. It's very good. The new arc just started, so your shop price still has issue 6. You can probably get it on right now. Where Monsters Lie just started, which is my new 4-issue series from Dark Horse, which is about a gated community for slasher villains. It's very good. And then once that ends, I think the same day, there's 5 weekends this month, so it might not be, but I think the Peacemaker comes out the same day I Hate This Place and Where Monsters Lie does. So I think it's going to be like double Kyle for a while. So May 2nd, the first Wednesday of May, Peacemaker comes out, and that's what I got. That's announced that I can talk about for the next 7 months. We're very excited. Lots of Kyle Starks comics coming out, and hopefully more right after that because we got stuff we're working on. So very exciting.
Love it. Can't wait for more. Hopefully we can do this again when you do have
for sure, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it. And we will see you guys next time. Take care, guys.